there, and thank you so much for joining me. This talk is Module 2 of the Implement Enterprise Architecture course. So the purpose of the course is to show you how I approach enterprise architecture so that it gains the traction and momentum to grow and mature it. This course is an implementation plan. So it's the steps that I take to implement enterprise architecture. This course does not contain templates or information, how to type information. I'm going to cover those in other courses. So we completed Module 1, which was creating the organization's consolidated roadmap. This module is going to cover how we start to use that roadmap as a key planning resource. I do want to make a correction to that last module. I ended the module by saying that phase took about 3 to 4 weeks. It should have been months. That first phase takes about 3 to 4 months to create that consolidated roadmap. And the biggest reason is those meetings with the senior executives. It's not easy to bring them all together and get on their in their timetable. So keys to success for this module is I wouldn't even start implementing this phase until you've completed all of those tasks in phase 1. You have that consolidated roadmap complete and in your hand. A big part of this module is we have to continue to stay on everyone's radar. This is not an easy task, but you have to continue working with the full organization and educating them on enterprise architecture, what it is, what it's all about, what the benefit for them is. This first year really is, you spend half your time educating the organization, doing presentations, selling it, explaining about it, and then the other half, it's probably even less than half, is where you're actually doing EA and creating the artifacts. Don't stop until you get that consolidated roadmap created. That's all I can say is that roadmap is the key to this success. Don't continue with it if you haven't gotten in front of those executives. You have to follow all those steps. You have to get the prioritization. You have to get the endorsement, or it's not going to go anywhere. It's one of the reasons why you need that full-time EA position. If you can get that in the organization, if you can achieve that, then you've already got some buy-in or some support for what's to come. Continue to use that and grow that momentum. This consolidated roadmap and doing it the way that I explained it is the only way I've ever been able to succeed at this and see this go through. So I want to do a little bit of a refresher again, going back to the EA process, which is imagine the possibilities through design, make it come alive through projects, and realize the benefits through production. And again, these are all the EA activities. This module is going to cover the highlighted activities. So our milestone now is to start using the consolidated roadmap. And what do I mean by using it? Well, we want to use the roadmap for planning sessions, for project scoping and project exercises, to align projects. And then once you start aligning projects, so what that means is now we're going to start to hold those architecture review boards, sessions to ensure that projects that are coming alive are meeting all of our goals and objectives. So what are the things that we need to have happen to achieve all of this? So starting with that EA practice roadmap again, we just finished creating the consolidated roadmap, so now we can remove all of those items. And now we're left with this. These are our remaining items. So our first step is to go back to it and start to create that implementation plan. So our first step is the planning sessions. So starting small, we need to start showing the value of this roadmap. Show how it makes planning sessions that much easier, because you know what, we've already done a lot of legwork to get the activities and that prioritization for that. So if you remember, we were when we were creating that roadmap, we brought all of those 5 disciplines together to ensure that everything was included on that roadmap. And we started with the business roadmap, and we applied that prioritization. We addressed the risk, the liability, value add, We included foundational pieces. Like, we really did our due diligence to pull that all together. Not only did we do our diligence to pull it together, we have the endorsement of the senior executive team. So now what we want to start doing is we want to start figuring out where these planning sessions are happening, and we want to start participating. I tend to go in like a fly on the wall. I want to listen to what they're doing. I want to, start hearing some of their pain points and some of their discussions. And then I want to do a little horse and pony show where I'm starting to show the value of this consolidated roadmap. So I've got a tangible thing that I can put in front of them, and I can start talking about the activities, and then I can start to talk to them about how it was created and all of those great things that I mentioned that, this has the support. It's not about leading planning sessions or telling them what to do at this point. At this point, we are educating, and we're just showing them what we have, showing them what we're doing, showing them what we're all about. Step 2 is the project scoping sessions. So very similar to those planning sessions, we want to start participating in the project scoping sessions. So the fact that we added more detail to those top priority activities, it puts us in a really strong position to start helping with the scoping. So again, I would participate the same way, and I would start to show all the value to this group of people. Again, we're educating. The next step is to start adding architectural components to your project charters. So we want to ensure that everything we as architects want the projects to do and achieve is now documented. So what I typically do is I convince the project management office, or the one leading the PMO, I want to convince them to add a section to the project charter. So critical to the success, what I want to do is I want to start to show the value of it. These are the things that are going to ensure your project is successful. These are the things that we are going to measure, and the things that we will review to ensure business goals and objectives are met. And ultimately, we want to ensure that the projects are aligning to the executive's vision. So this really goes back to all of those EA practice goals that the senior executives want that we kind of went over. So projects must see that this is coming directly from those senior executives. As soon as they start to see it's a good thing, they're going to let it happen. Again, starting small, I'll at least get this section in, I'll get a small part of it, and that's it. I'm not pushing, I'm not changing things, I'm adding this section. And we're going to start to talk about what success means for the project, how we're going to measure it, and we're going to also talk about some of those architectural components that will align with the vision. And it goes back to what are the reusable components and what are the risks we're trying to reduce and things like that. I don't have an example for it. Those how-to videos that are coming forward are going to show you how I actually do it. The mission or the goal of this course is to start to talk to you about all of the different steps I take, the goal of each of the steps, and some of the things that I find that are critical for success. So the next thing is now we want to start updating the project plans or the project templates to include these architecture review board tasks. So the goal is to start having touch points throughout the project to ensure alignment. We want to make sure that this architectural section that we put in is interpreted correctly. We want to make sure that our vision and the things that we are architecturally are saying make sense as details come forward. So a project's going to dive in and pull out all the details, which we never did, nor do we ever want to do, but we want to make sure it still makes sense. We want to make sure that they're interpreting all our vision, our design principles, everything like that. It's a two-way street, and it's more of a touch point. Critical to the success at the start, this is not a review of the work. This is a touch point to make sure everything makes sense. We want to make sure this project is successful. We want to make sure that the things that we have heard are interpreted correctly. This is also an opportunity to start sharing information across your projects and across the different departments. When I hate using the word board because people think that it holds a lot of power and they don't want to go to it. But as soon as I start describing it this way, people start to get excited, and every time I held a meeting, the room was full. A lot of them are spectators, which is great because your organization is learning and educating without you actually having to stand up and teach them or create documents. They're watching the process, they're watching what happens, they're engaging. It does work. The next thing we want to start doing is having an EA representative on each project. And again, the goal is really just to stay engaged with all the points of change throughout your organization. So we want to ensure success. We want to start hearing things that are happening as details come forward, and we want to make sure things are interpreted correctly. Yes, I said that we were doing that within the ARB sessions, but those don't happen all the time or throughout the project. By working with the PMO to get an architect represented on each project, we're there as the eyes and ears to start hearing what's going on. The other interesting thing is if we happen, and I don't care what discipline goes on to the project, because if I've got a business person or even a technical person on the project, the thing is they then bring that information back. So if they hear that something is changing, if they're a technical person, they hear something, the business is changing, they can start talking with the business architect, and that person can go off and do more due diligence to make sure that the architectural components make sense. So critical to success, this is our eyes and ears, like I said, within the projects, and you're hearing what's going on the floor. You're watching for road projects or scope creep and things like that. This gives the project also a point to escalate anything. You got to remember that the EA has the executive's ear, right? They went through that prioritization. They've already talked about that consolidated roadmap and some of the things that have to happen. This will give the project team a way to escalate it quite fast up into the senior executives if need be. So it's a win-win for everybody. The next thing is to create that review board terms of reference. So again, we've now got projects that are now including ARB tasks within their project plan. So now we need to create the terms of reference for what this architecture review board really is. I did put a bit of an example on the course for how to create that EA maturity roadmap. That was just sort of to really help people understand what the ARB is. I'm not going to create that. It's not included here. Again, we are not including templates or how-tos. This is when this step happens. So the goal of this is to ensure everybody on the organization is on the same page and what this review board responsibility really is. Critical to its success at the beginning of this is it does not make decisions. It's making a recommendation to the senior executives, and the senior executives are making the ultimate decision. Having said that, throughout this first year and as our EA program or practice matures, we are going to change that. So we always are starting small and we're going to slowly grow and mature it. Critical to success of any practice is to review all of these documents and all these processes and all these terms of references that we're creating and ensure they still make sense. They have to evolve as the practice evolves. I always want to get an endorsement from the senior executives when I create something like this, and the reason for it is it's letting them know what's going on and it's getting their buy-in. As soon as the executives have endorsed it, it means that it's gold, it's power, it's going to happen. So I want to ensure that I have their support. This board really has to be respected and show its value. It can't only serve a purpose for the architectural team, it's got to serve a purpose for everybody, or they will start bypassing it. This is about the time that I want to start getting a full-time business architect on board. So up until now, I've really done all this work on my own as an enterprise architect. The main reason is, we're just getting things started, and the same message just has to be preached. So we have to start creating the stuff and preaching the method, the process, and we have to get it going before we can start bringing on any team members. So the goal is to have an individual responsible for the business roadmap. This is going to be dependent on the size of your organization and the strength of the EA. I'm going to assume that this organization is big and each discipline is going to be an individual person, just for the purpose of this whole course and this talk. Depending on the size of your organization, your EA might be the EA and the business architect. You may not have a full-time business architect. You might just have somebody that's working part-time. Again, this has to be customized to your organization for it to work. But so now, again, I'm assuming that it's going to be a full-time person. It takes time to hire someone. So this is about the time that I start to put it hiring process on my radar. And now that the organization really understands what's going on, what this business roadmap is, it's an easier thing for me to sell the need for it. So this individual really is working with that business roadmap. So critical to the success is for the enterprise architect to have somebody on the business floor, have the ears and eyes, always listening. So they are going to be doing the points of change for business. They're going to be doing the planning sessions, building out their business roadmap. They're going to be working with the business analyst to understand what's going on. But this is not going to go anywhere unless the senior executives see the value behind it. So I guess that's all I'm going to say on that. At the same time, I start thinking about the information architect. That business and information architect have to really go hand in hand. And you may not realize how big the information architect role is, because they cross both the information and data. I have sat in this position, it's probably it might be my strongest, excuse me, and it's a full-time position. There's a lot of work that goes into that one. So again, depending on the size of your organization, I leave it up to you to decide if it is a full-time position, just on this, if they're sharing it, if they're part-time, but we need somebody responsible for that information roadmap. And in order for the EA to be successful, again, it's somebody on the floor, but in that information and that data space. Depending on how many applications you have, they're the data architect across all of them. Depending on how many business units and business areas, they are, keeping that business dictionary going. So this is about the time that I start to bring them on. And then likewise, the application architect. So again, they're responsible for functions. These three are, this is about the time that, if you go back to that introduction, where they're now interpreting all this stuff and building out their roadmaps. We also want to start holding our monthly architecture review board meetings. I've also heard these, I've also called these meetings architecture and standards review board. It's really up to your organization. I run them about the same. It's just that I got to get a name that's comfortable for the organization. But here, it's a review board, but it is looking at standards and architecture. So the goal is to start holding these sessions. We put them on the project charter. We created the terms of reference so everybody's okay and they understand what's going on. And now we start holding these sessions. I tend to hold a session once a month. I'll pick the third Thursday of every month that I'm going to hold a session, and I'm going to book this meeting. Projects need to get on the agenda for this. They have to start coming to me. They know their project schedule. They now have the tasks in their project plan. They have to come in advance and schedule with me. So again, this is not a review of their work, it's a touch point, and this is also an opportunity to share information across projects. So how I usually run them is I get the projects to tell me when they're coming forward. So are they coming forward for a business requirement review? Are they coming for functional? Are they whatever we've decided on the project charter of what they're coming for? Then I'll send out messages to certain people within the organization, my SMEs and my business leads, my operational leads, and I'll tell them what's going on. So this is where they start to attend like flies on the wall, and they'll listen to what's going on, and this is where they're learning what's happening. And it's really interesting, because if you're building reusable components, or you're building a capability that other business areas could then take advantage of, you're giving them a heads up as to what's happening, and they're getting to see some of the designs and the reviews. And quite often they can, pop up their hand, did you think about this, because this is what we do. And it gets these discussion points going. It's great. So that is the end of all the tasks to start using it. Those are the types of things that I start to stand up to use the consolidated roadmap. Again, once I've created my implementation plan, I want to go back to the EA practice roadmap. I want to cross off those items. As soon as we implement them, then I'm going to remove them. So you can see how this whole roadmap here is evolving. As we do the activities, we're taking it off. Another interesting thing that you will note is once you start implementing things, you might be adding other activities that are coming up or that you're thinking of, and you might be putting new ones on here. You might be breaking them apart because they stay quite high level, but as they come current, you want to start breaking them out. What I've done is I've put a copy of this, 2 copies in each section. I put the one at the beginning that we're starting with, and then the one at the end once we've crossed things off. So you can kind of compare them, and you can see the way some of them have changed. So where I've crossed them off, I've interpreted them a little differently once I go and make an implementation into an implementation plan. That's how you work with all of this. So we just covered 11 activities that show you how I start to work with the organization when it comes to using that consolidated roadmap. Working full time, again, this one is about 3 months. And this is because we are trying to work with projects. So the timeline, that's an average. It will be different for every organization. But what we want to do is we want to start working with that first or second project to get that full cycle of the ARB out. So this phase started to show the organization the benefits of that consolidated roadmap as a planning tool, and it shows how the enterprise architecture team starts to integrate with the organization, looking for the points of change and stuff like that. The next module is going to cover how we evolve the consolidated roadmap in order to keep it current. It's a very similar process to what we're doing with that EA practice roadmap. We're creating an implementation plan, and the implementation plan is usually for a 3-6 month period. We show how we pull the activities off and we do them. We show how we possibly are adding more activities and we're breaking them apart. And then once we implement them, we take them off the roadmap. So the roadmap does get smaller. But then what's going to happen is once we go into the next year, we're going to probably add more items for what we want to do. And it's just this continual cycle. So we're basically doing EA on the EA practice as well as on the organization. So thank you so much, and catch me next time when I'm going to go into Module 3.